Saudi Arabia to deepen partnership with 8 strategic partners, one of whom is India. The Prime Minister welcomed the announcement of His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, to invest $100 billion in India in a range of areas like energy, refining, petrochemicals, infrastructure, agriculture, manufacturing, etc. This is a clear reflection of the confidence of Saudi Arabia in the vibrancy of the Indian economy and the tremendous opportunities available in India for investment. They also expressed satisfaction at the positive trend in bilateral trade in the recent past and the need to tap the untapped potential in trade, particularly in non-oil trade. They expressed satisfaction at the first joint venture in energy of a refinery and petrochemical project estimated at $44 billion. We also welcome Saudi Arabia's participation in India's strategic petroleum reserves. The two leaders appreciated the various initiatives being taken in their respective countries, including Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 and India's flagship initiatives like Make in India, Startup India, Digital India, etc. The Crown Prince also welcomed Prime Minister's initiative on coalition on disaster-resilient infrastructure and hailed it as an important step towards disaster management. The two leaders condemned in the strongest terms the recent terrorist attack on Indian forces in Pulwama in Jammu and Kashmir. They expressed strong condemnation of terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. They called on all states to reject the use of terrorism against other countries, dismantle terrorist infrastructure, cut off any support, any kind of support and financing to terrorists from all territories against other states, and bring perpetrators of terrorism to justice. Both leaders called upon all countries to renounce the use of terrorism as an instrument of state policy. They called on states to deny access to weapons to commit terrorist acts against other countries. Both leaders underlined the importance of comprehensive sanctioning of terrorists and their organizations by the United Nations. They called for concerted action by the international community against terrorism and early adoption of the UN Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. His Royal Highness appreciated consistent efforts made by Prime Minister Modi since May 2014, including Prime Minister's personal initiatives to have friendly relations with Pakistan. In this context, both sides agreed on the need for creation of conditions necessary for resumption of the comprehensive dialogue between India and Pakistan. The Crown Prince highlighted terrorism and extremism as matters of common concern and expressed his determination to cooperate with India to fight this menace, particularly through strong intelligence partnership with India. To enhance further cooperation in counter-terrorism efforts and benefit mutually from real-time intelligence sharing, the two leaders agreed to constitute a comprehensive security dialogue at the level of national security advisors and set up a joint working group on counter-terrorism. On the defense front, the two leaders welcomed the outcome of the recently held 4th Joint Committee of Defense Cooperation in Riyadh in January this year. They agreed to hold the first joint naval exercises at the earliest and expand our defense relations in other areas like joint exercises, joint production, supply chain development, etc. Both leaders agreed to enhance the cooperation to security in the Gulf and the Indian Ocean region. They agreed to cooperate along with other Indian Ocean Rim countries in serving as the net security provider for the Indian Ocean region. On regional connectivity projects, both sides agreed that they should be based on universally recognized international norms, including respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. The leaders expressed serious concern at cyber terrorism and misuse of cyberspace. They agreed to continue ongoing close cooperation in a range of security issues. Prime Minister thanked the Saudi leadership for hosting a very large Indian community of over 2.7 million and for looking after their welfare. Prime Minister also thanked Saudi Arabia for designating India as the guest of honor in the prestigious Janadriya festival in 2018. Both leaders agreed to increase the frequency of direct flights of carriers of India and Saudi Arabia by 384,000 seats per annum, which will give a huge boost to tourism as well as to the large Indian community in Saudi Arabia. At our request, Saudi Arabia have decided to increase the quota for Hajj pilgrims from India to 2 lakhs. This gesture was deeply appreciated. India has also decided to extend e-visa facilities to Saudi nationals. Saudi Arabia has also agreed to resolve issues relating to Indian workers who are currently stranded in Saudi Arabia due to the closure of one foreign company. This gesture was also deeply appreciated. Both sides committed themselves to promote reformed multilateralism in multilateral fora and in international organizations, including pursuing UN Security Council reforms. We will also work together to address the problems and issues of fugitive economic offenders. The following MOUs were signed this afternoon. MOU on investing in the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund of India, MOU on cooperation in the field of tourism, MOU on cooperation in the field of housing, Framework Cooperation Agreement between Invest India and Saudi Arabia General Investment Authority, MOU on cooperation in broadcasting for exchange of audiovisual programs, and finally, agreement for from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to join the International Solar Alliance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the briefing. I now open the floor to questions. Would request if you could introduce yourself, your name and the organization you represent when you ask the question. Arthur and Maha.
Good evening. The question is for Secretary R. Turumurthy. You mentioned that there is a concerted understanding of going back to resumption of comprehensive dialogue. I presume it's with the neighboring country to our west. My question, sir, is this: why the reluctance or shying away from actually naming the perpetrators of the Pulwama attack when on every forum the Honorable Prime Minister and every other representative of the government has done so? Is there a specific reason?
Related question: was the complicity of Pakistan in the Pulwama attack underlined?
The complicity of Pakistan in the Pulwama attack was very much underlined. And what they agreed, just to answer your question, what they agreed was the need for creating the necessary conditions for any resumption of talks. And the other aspect of your question is really on Pakistan. At this point of time, let us focus on the Saudi Arabian visit.
Ranjit ji.
And the $100 billion fund you referred to includes the already committed $44 billion Ratnagiri refinery project, and also it will be invested through National Investment and Infrastructure Fund.
We'll take one more. Brahm Prakash.
क्या सऊदी की तरफ से भारत पाकिस्तान के बीच जो टेंशन चल रही है, इसको लेकर क्या मध्यस्थता की पेशकश की गई है भारत के समक्ष?
As far as your question is concerned, I don't think we have necessarily a breakup of the 100 billion. But that said, definitely we are counting the investment which is going to go into the refinery and the petrochemical complex also. That said, I wanted to also clarify that out of the 44 billion, actually what I think they have envisaged is a 50-50 split between Indian investors and the foreign investors. And even as regards the 50-50 split, two investors are coming in, which is from UAE is ADNOC, and from Saudi Arabia it is Aramco. So we are looking at a much reduced type of investment, which is probably $11 to $12 billion from the Saudi Arabian side. So that's why, yes, it will probably include definitely this one, but I'm not able to give you a split up as such for the 100 billion. And just to answer your question, no, there is no figure which has been mentioned. But you will recall that the UAE had invested $1 billion in the national, the infrastructure fund, and therefore we are looking at a figure for investment by the Saudi side into the NIIF. As of now, we don't have a figure. And to answer your question, at this point of time, no mediation has been offered.
You see, what I'll do is, if there is any question which relates to the meeting today and connects to Pakistan, I think we will take. Secretary has already answered that question. He has made it very clear that both countries, they strongly condemned the Pulwama attack in the strongest possible term. So I will not take any question related to this topic now. Yes, please.
So this is related to the 100 billion investment. I just wanted to understand, is there a time period when this investment will come in?
There is no time period.
Okay.
As of now.
Okay, so it was a commitment to invest 100 billion. I mean, is that?
It was a commitment to invest 100 billion.
Yes.
But let me also say that some of the talks are already going on. Okay. On what are the areas and the sectors we should be looking at.
Right.
And in fact, the Niti Aayog team was there just 4 days ago, precisely to look at the various areas which they are looking at for investment. And in fact, the workshop which took place between Niti Aayog and the Saudi Center for International Strategic Partnership, it took place in Riyadh. They have identified more than 40 opportunities for joint collaboration investments across various sectors. So we will have to sit and work through these 40 sectors and 40 opportunities and see what comes up.
Siddhant.
So one question is on the prisoners in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia holds the largest number of Indian prisoners in West Asia in their jails. Was that discussed? And another question on the oil prices, something that the Indian Prime Minister also raised in his last meeting on the sidelines of G20.
Yeah, the issue of prisoners was discussed. And the reaction from the Saudi side was a positive reaction. But at this point of time, we are working through this. But it was very much taken up. And the other one was? Oil prices. Yes, and that has always been a matter of discussion. Particularly energy is a major area of, and Saudi Arabia is one of the pillars of our energy security. So therefore, all these were taken up with the Saudi side.
Just hold on, I'll come to you. Just one sec. Aap dono. If you can introduce yourself as well.
My name is Zubair Ahmed. I'm from the BBC. Recent reports are that Indians working in Saudi Arabia are facing a lot of hardships. Probably more than 100,000 Indian workers have come back to India. Just like the Pakistani government spoke to the Saudi government to ease up the new tax regime that the Saudi government has imposed on workers there. Has the government of India taken up this issue with the Saudi government?
I'll take one more. Yeah.
My name is Vineet Dikshit. I'm from Swaraj Express News Channel. This is about what I gather was extending Saudi Arabia's support to tackle the pending resolution of terrorism at United Nations. Is it the same which is pending since 1986? And why this is being, taking long time? What are the chief roadblocks?
This actually, your question goes beyond the mandate of what we are discussing today. It's more or less a union-related matter. You're talking about CCIT, right?
Yeah, but it has been referred.
Yes, yes.
Now let me say that the issue of Indian workers in Saudi Arabia is a matter of high importance for both countries. And these are discussed in various contexts, and including today. They have been discussed. The taxes you are actually referring to is not on the workers actually. It is slightly different, just for clarification. But the one of the issue which is rather immediate, which we were accosted with, was that there was a foreign company which had actually closed down. I think it's a Cyprus company in which more than 2,600 workers have been stranded, and this has been a matter which has been of great concern to us and great concern to the Saudi side also, and we have been working with them to try and resolve this. And the indication that we have got today is a very positive indication, and that is why I'm happy to announce that we are working through this. And as regards a few other things also, we have taken it up with them, and they have promised that they will be considering it most seriously.
So for accuracy's sake, you said the number of Indians working there is 2.7 million. But often I think the numbers vary. It's 3.1 million or 3 million. So what is the correct number?
These numbers are based on the official figures released by the Saudi Ministry of Interior from time to time. You're right, there was a time, a year or so ago, or maybe a little more, when it was 3.1. But the latest figures which have been received by us this January, or maybe December, is 2.7 plus. So these numbers keep changing, plus up and down depending on many factors, but this is the figure as of right now. When the next figures come, we will be in a position, but as of right now we're talking about 2.7 plus.
So the number of returnees is more than 100,000, or?
No, so you are talking about a period which included, since you have mentioned it, the amnesty which went on in 17 with all people with illegal status, that basically meant no documents. They were covered, and those who did not avail of that amnesty, the Saudis declared and went on to a program of flushing out. So in that process, during amnesty and this thing, I don't think more than 100,000 total plus, but over a period of a year and a half has happened.
No, your question has been answered, right? CCIT is something which normally when we have a discussion with our partners, we do request and we tell them that this is a matter which has been long pending, and we seek their support in concluding this agreement at the earliest. It is not Saudi specific. Please use the mic and then I'll come to you.
The hard quota hike will be implemented from this year or next year?
Indrani, you had a question?
Thiru, did I hear you right when you said that the Saudi prince agreed
that terrorists of all varieties should be sanctioned comprehensively by the UN. In that case, how does it square with the joint statement that they made with the Pakistanis 2 days ago that said that cautioned against politicizing UN sanctions?
Yeah, just to answer the other question, the agreement for hiking the Hajj quota has just been reached, and when it will come effective will really depend on the logistical and other things, and we will have to discuss with them because it's a very, very massive exercise. So that's why that is something we need to sit and discuss. And as far as your question is concerned, that we have agreed on, let me just read it out to you. This is for comprehensive sanctioning of not only the terrorists but also the terrorist organizations by the United Nations. So it is both, because we have had a couple of anomalies, and that is why it was important for us to emphasize the fact that it is not just the terrorist organization, it is also important for the terrorists to also be sanctioned in that organization. And that is something which they have completely agreed. See, number one, I don't want to comment on how did it square up, but let me say that if you're really looking at politicization, then you know that who is politicizing it.
Ramanand.
Sir, was there any discussion on other common regional issues, and if so, could you just give us an outline of what were the areas?
I'll take 2 more questions.
Mr. Tirumuthi, on this side. On security and defense and terrorism, there were references in 2014, 2016 and 2010. A lot of the language is used here. What's difference in defense and terrorism cooperation in this instance? Comprehensive sanctions as mentioned by Indrani is one. What is other?
Take the last question, sir.
Sorry? What did you say? Comprehensive?
No, what I said, a lot of the language is the same as that was mentioned in 2016 and the 2014 joint statements and declarations. So what is new in all this, apart from one that Indrani mentioned about comprehensive sanctioning? What are the other forward movement in defense and terrorism?
I'll take the last question. Kalol. Yeah.
Sir, did you discuss the Afghan situation with the Saudi delegation? And are the Saudis on the same side as far as the Indian position is concerned of, Afghan-led and Afghan-controlled peace process?
No, we did not discuss the Afghan situation during this visit. As far as other areas which were discussed, broadly it referred to, we discussed areas relating to the Middle East, Syria and Palestine. In connection with your question, I think you should look at the joint statement before you sort of see what is the difference between the statement now and the statement before. But one of the important aspects is that they have acknowledged, and I think that is important, that as she has pointed out, the comprehensive sanctioning of terrorists and the organization. I think that is certainly something which they've this thing. We have also talked about we condemned, of course, in the strongest terms, the terrorist attack on our Indian forces in Pulwama, and we are also looked at the need for real-time intelligence sharing and a comprehensive security dialogue at the level of the national security advisors. And there has also been a clear indication by the leaders and a clear calling upon all countries to renounce the use of terrorism as an instrument of state policy. I think some of these things, and once again, they are also looking at cutting off any support and financing to terrorists from all territories against other states.
Ramanand, your question has been answered, right? With this, we conclude this special press briefing on the visit of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to India. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ambassador. And thank you all for joining.